Okay, so we have a minus 1/2 squared equals, and we're going to have to combine this 20 and 1/4. So I have to change the 20 to, because right now it's got a denominator of 1. I need it to have a denominator of 4 so I can add these together. So if I multiply this 1 by 4, I have to multiply the 20 by 4, which gives me 80 over 4. Plus 1 over 4. Okay, so that is a minus 1/2 squared equals 81 over 4. Okay, so now I need to get rid of this square guy, so I can take the square root of this and the square root of this, because if I do it to this side, I got to do it to this side, right? So the square root of a square is just whatever is being squared. So that leaves us with just a minus 1/2 over here, because basically the square root and the square cancel each other out. Okay, so you have a minus 1/2 equals, plus or minus, since it's a square root, it can be a negative sign. I mean, it could be a negative number squared. So that is going to be, the square root of 81 is 9, and the square root of 4 is 2. All right, so we have a minus 1/2 equals plus or minus 9/2. So now, to get the a alone, I'm going to move or add 1/2 to both sides. So when I add 1/2 to both sides, I have 1/2 plus or minus 9/2. Which means, if I add, I have 1 plus 9 is 10 over 2, which is 5, and a is, because if I subtract it, 1 minus 8, that gives me a 1 minus 9 gives me a negative 8, and negative 8 divided by 2 is a negative 4. So we have 2 answers. All right, this one's a little bit more difficult because you have a decimal right here, and to do completing the square, the number in front of the x squared has to be 1. So we have to get rid of this negative 0.25. So if we divide everything by negative 0.25, we're actually multiplying by 1/4, because 0.25 is 1/4, right? And if you divide by 1/4, when you divide by a fraction, you leave change flip, right? So you change it to multiplication and you flip this and make it 4 over 1, right? So we're multiplying everything here by 4, okay? So let's get this out of the way. Okay, so if we multiply all this by 4, that leaves us x squared here minus 28x, and then this would be minus 60, but I'm going to move it to the other side, so plus 60 on this side. Okay, because 15 times 4 is 60. It was a negative over here, so I add 60 to both sides, and I get a positive 60 on the right. All right, so I take half of 28, and I get 14, negative 14, and I square it. So negative 14 times negative 14 is 196. So I add 196 to both sides, right? Now, that means this, darn it. Okay, let's try that again. That means that this can be written as x minus 14 squared equals 256. Okay? So, if I take the square root of this and the square root of this, I get the x minus 14, and I get 16 over here, because 16 times 16 is 256. All right, so then I add 14 to both, and this is plus or minus, by the way. So I add 14 to both sides, and I have 14 plus 16, or 14 minus 16. So x could be 14 plus 16 is 30, or 14 minus 16 is negative 2. So it can be either one of those. All right, last one over here on the completing the square. So, we want to add 38 to both sides, making this p, why is that so blurry? P plus 14p, and then equals 38 on this side. All right, so half of 14 is 7, and 7 squared is 49. So I'm going to add 49 here, and I'm going to add 49 over here. All right, so I can write this as p plus 7 squared equals And 38 plus 49 is 87. 87. So I take the square root over here and the square root here, and I get p plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 87. Now, 87 is a prime number, meaning it can't be factored down. There's no factors that we can pull out of that, especially a perfect square one. So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. And we have p equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 87. And you just leave it just like that. And that's perfectly fine. All right, last three. So we have this one. They want us to solve by using the quadratic formula. So just for a reminder, the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c, and all of that divided by 2 times a. Okay? That's the formula that you need to use. So we come back over here and we remember, that the number in front here is your a, the number in front of the x, just with no, exponent is your b, and the number with no variable all is your c. Now, the thing is this c is going to have to get pushed over here and set this equal to 0. So we're going to rewrite this equation, and it's going to be x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. Okay? So a is 1, b is negative 8, and c is 16. All right? So to write this, or to follow the equation, it's the opposite of b. So it's going to be 8, right? Ugly 8. Plus or minus the square root of b squared would be negative 8 times negative 8 is a 64, minus 4 times a is 1 and c is 16. Okay? All divided by 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? So, let's clean this up a little bit. 8 plus or minus the square root of 64, and then 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 16 is 64. So minus 64. All over 2. Well, 64 and minus 64 in my book is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. So we have, that basically gets thrown out, right? And so you have 8 over 2, which is 4. That's when you will only have one answer, actually. Interesting. Didn't even know that one did that. Okay, again, this one, I need this 24 over here. So we have to rewrite it. We have 8x squared minus 4x, forgot the square, minus 4x minus 24 equals 0. Okay? So, I can divide all of these by 4. So let's do that. If I divide all of these by 4, I get 2x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. That's going to be easier numbers to work with. So we plug it into our equation. The opposite of b, our b here in this case is negative 1, right? So the opposite of b would just be 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, minus 4 times a is 2, and c is negative 6. All divided by 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, oops, sorry. There you go. Now, let's clean it up a bit. So we have 1 plus or minus the square root of, let's see, 1 plus 48 is 49 over 4. And we all know that the square root of 49 is 7. So we have 1 plus or minus 7 over 4. Which means if we add 7, 1 and 7, we get 8 divided by 4 is 2. If we subtract 7, we get negative 6 over 4, which is a negative 3 halves. So your two answers are 2 and 3 halves. Negative 3 halves. Last one, you guys. Woohoo! Okay. Again, we need to make sure this is written in the correct form, and it's not. We have negative 4x squared, and then our negative 9x is over here. This guy needs to move over here. Okay? Woo. So, this guy needs to move right there in between the 4's. So, let's rewrite this. We have negative 4x squared, and then minus 9x, and plus 4 equals 0. And the reason that's important is because this is where you get your letters, or whatever, your numbers for the formula, because this is your A, this is your B, and this is your C. All right, so the opposite of B in this case would be 9, plus or minus the square root of B squared would be 81. 9 times 9 is 81, minus 4 times A is minus 4, and C is a positive 4. All over 2 times negative 4 is a negative 8. Oops, okay. So, B squared minus 4AC over 2A. All right, so, let's see. We've got negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 81. And then negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So 81 minus 64 all over negative 8. Okay? And